tell in this almost 21 years of our parish. And it's my favorite topic to talk about. I mean, I'm invited to go different parishes all the time and tell the story of our parish. And 4 diocesan assemblies across the country I've gone and tell the story. Both St. Tikhon's and St. Vladimir's seminaries, I was invited to come and tell our story. 2 cathedral parish, 5 mission schools, about a half dozen parishes throughout the Eastern Seaboard, that they want to hear how did this work for us here and what can they do to replicate it. In the book of Acts, when our Lord tells the apostles, you receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. You should be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, even to the uttermost parts of the earth, even Mechanicsburg, right? And so we're called to do this from literally the day of Pentecost. This is what we're supposed to do, is start parishes and build communities. And Father Michael Alexa, our dear friend of blessed memory, he died in 2023, his big thing was always tell the story. Tell the story of your family, of your friendship, of your romance, whatever, of your church. Tell the story. And his storytelling is what helped Machishka Olga be canonized, and St. Vasily we celebrate today, his canonization to go forward, because he told the story of these people that sometimes people forgot. So let's tell the story. Once upon a time, right? Our parish started as a spin-off of Christ the Savior in Harrisburg. It was a blessed mission, not the result of a fight. Father Dan Resitar of blessed memory, the man, the myth, the legend, and back in the 60s, when they founded Christ the Savior, he said that one day there should be an Orthodox church on the West Shore. And it didn't come to fruition until, yes?
I'm sorry.
Yes?
Would you be willing to start over? You missed about the first 2 minutes of the audio.
Oh.
Sorry. But then we'd have the full thing.
Okay.
For those of us watching in the hall.
So, they can all catch up. Briefly tell the story of our parish, some example of important things we had done, why we did them, talk about some parish goals going forward, and give thanks to God for everything we've been given. And so, like I said, I'm a fan of all topic questions. If I talk too fast, slow me down. There's a lot to tell in 21 years. And I've given this presentation many times in different venues all across our Orthodox Church in America because it's my favorite topic to talk about. And it's an easy one to talk about. I just change a couple dates and a couple things, and then it's ready to go. But this is what we are called to do from the beginning. In the book of Acts, the Lord tells the disciples, when you receive power when the Holy Spirit was come upon you, you should be my witnesses both in Jerusalem, in all Judea, Samaria, even to the uttermost parts of the earth, including Mechanicsburg. Father Michael Alexa, blessed memory, told us to tell the story. And I think it's important for us to do this, to tell the story to our parish, that we know where we came from. And so we'll do that. So, our parish was started in 2004 as a spin-off of Christ the Savior in Harrisburg. It was a blessed mission, not the result of a fight. No one was like fighting over the pierogi recipe or what color the dome should be or something like that, which happened in the past. But he had this vision that even in his journals, Father Dan used to write, there's like page of the day calendar things, and he'd write on them every day. And there's one from the 1960s talking about starting a mission in Mechanicsburg, or at the West Shore. And it didn't come to fruition until 2004 because there's some things that need to happen. You know, the Harrisburg Parish was on the east shore of the Susquehanna. They just celebrated their 40th anniversary. They paid off their church mortgage, and there was a good number of parishioners coming, 20 or so, coming from about 45 minutes away, traveling on 81 and everything else to get to Christ the Savior. And so people were talking about, is there anything we do on the West Shore closer for people to come to? Now, funny story. When I first came to this area and was visiting Christ the Savior, the Susquehanna River could have been the Gulf of Mexico for all you, or America, whatever it is now. No one crossed it. And this older gentleman I was talking to, he said, oh, I've been to the West Shore once. Like this great divide of the Susquehanna River. I mean, we go back and forth all the time. So it's really kind of an interesting thing, like putting a mission on the West Shore was this huge thing. And so when it came to fruition in June of 2004, Father Dan Kavalek, how you doing, right? 22 people were present at the first liturgy. How many here were there at the first liturgy? Alice? 1, right? It's amazing. And last Sunday we had 186. What do we have today, Machishka? 193, okay. So a lot more than 22, but God has blessed it. we rented space from this United Methodist Minchester Central. It's a disaster relief center. They collect goods and things for disasters around the country and then send it out. And we met in their lobby, setting up and taking down. We come before Vespers, set the whole chapel up, have Vespers, liturgy, take everything down during coffee hour, put it away, and then go from there. And for the first year, a retired priest served on weekends. The entire church fit on one of these. And Simeon Jekyll, Mark Linehan, and Joe Kurtz had it down to a science how to fit everything we owned onto this pallet. And literally, this goes here, this goes there, right? So, meanwhile, your hero is in northeastern Pennsylvania serving at a parish that looked like this, right? And All Saints and Oliphant. That was Pascha 2005, my first Pascha as a priest. All the bells and whistles, big choir, big church, full church, whatever else. And the bishop sends me to this. And I thought to myself, okay. And this was after we cleaned up, right? So while this is all going on, this first year, the parish is doing their thing. I was ordained in January 2005. And serving at All Saints and Oliphant, I thought I was going to stay there. It was my mom's home parish. We knew the people. We kind of liked it. And then the bishop called me to his office, Metropolitan Herman, those of you who remember him of blessed memory, a dear man, was like my grandfather. He called me into his office and he said, would you consider the mission in Mechanicsburg? But the way he said it was, you will consider the mission in Mechanicsburg. Go talk to Matushka. After we discussed it and everything else, we decided this is what we need to do. And I was assigned here on Pentecost Sunday, June 19th, 2005. Look at that youngin', right? So note that, what have I got myself into? Look, because, so remember, all the bells and whistles of my other church, I come down here, the chalice was bent, I had to bend it back, the censer was broken, I had to put it back together, I didn't know where stuff was, and so one of the parishioners gave me a bouquet of flowers from their garden, because one of the traditions is on Pentecost, it's the Feast of Flowering Branches, you hold flowers, and at this moment, I know exactly what I'm thinking. I know exactly this moment. The reader at the time was supposed to read the reading from Acts of the Holy Spirit coming down on Pentecost, right? That's what my sermon was prepared on. I'm listening, I'm like, okay, the rushing wind, the Pentecost, tongues of fire. He ain't talking about tongues of fire. He read the reading from the week before by accident. So, now I'm a little bit more seasoned. I can just wing it and make a sermon, whatever. At that time, I had my sermon prepared. The first time I was going to speak in front of my people, and he's reading the wrong reading. So I'm dying inside thinking, what am I going to say? And then I realized at that moment, why is my hand burning? Because there were fire ants biting my hand. And I'm thinking, what have we gotten ourselves into? Matushka was as green as my vestments, pregnant with Nicholas. The choir director at the time, Barb Linehan, our first Sunday, were on vacation. So the person that was directing the choir handed her the tuning fork and said, here, you can do this. And she's like, okay. So poor Matushka is excusing herself to go, in the middle of the service, while she doesn't know these people from Adam. I'm in the front of the altar saying, what have we done? I came home to our little apartment in Mechanicsburg. We sat on the floor and we cried. It's like, what have we done? We hadn't moved our stuff yet. So it was just like, there was a filing cabinet, a chair, and ice cream in the freezer. That was all we had. And then we moved the next week. But I know this exact moment thinking, what have I done, right? So what do you do for a sapling, right? You water it, good soil, sunlight care. And then I asked Father Nick, what should I do for this new parish? Love them. What? Right? That's it? Yes, love them. And that's the truth of it. That's what he did in Alaska, and that's the recipe that worked. And so that's what we did. So how do we make this thing grow? We went from one Vespers a month to Vespers every Saturday. We went from having a regular church school from September until May. You had old calendar, new calendar. We had mission calendar. Whatever the feast was, we bunted the following weekend, and that's what we did because that's what we had to set up, and that's all we had. And then I kind of got saucy a little bit later. I wanted to have more services, but we didn't have the physical means to do it. So we started doing it in people's homes. That's literally the Kurtz's living room or dining room table. This was a park that we had Vespers and a picnic in the park. And so I call this blessed creativity. Blessed because the bishop blessed it. I didn't make stuff up. Can I do this? Yes. Can I do this? No. Right? And so we would call it, God in a box, because everything we had fit in a box, and we take it where we need to go. We call this boxodoxy, right? Those who remember those early days of the parish, there were certain things we couldn't put up. The reason why I love icons everywhere is because originally we couldn't put icons anywhere. We just put one on the back wall. And they had this weird, tribal chiefs thing hanging on the wall that looked at me every time I served. It was weird, not ideal. But that's where we were for this time. So rather quickly, we realized we can't do this. Like if we're going to grow as a parish, we need to do more. So we established a search committee to find our own place in Mechanicsburg or the surrounding areas. And after an 18-month search, we found this office suite, which I had driven by a bajillion times, never even thought of it for a church. But they had a place that they could, put a church in. It had kind of worked. It had an open space. It had offices. It had like a little kitchenette kind of thing. So I called the bishop. I mean, it wasn't ideal or for visibility. I called the bishop, and then our bishop, Metropolitan Tikhon, was Bishop Tikhon at the time. He comes down to Mechanicsburg, and he sees it. He says, I think this would work. And it was funny. He said, which way is east? Because the church is supposed to face east. This face due west. And I said, well, we actually are going to face the wrong direction. He said, well, if the Lord comes in glory, just turn around. I said, okay. Right? But when you build the church, build the right direction. Due east. Got it. So this was our last service. It was Christmas. And so we went from this to this. We took the boardroom of this place, knocked out some walls, and made the boardroom the altar. And then Joe Kurtz made the deacon doors and royal doors, and we made it work. So we went for now regular services. We had a real office. I could meet with people before I was meeting at Panera Bread. That was my office. We had a physical sign. This is where we're located. But now we have new limitations, right? We have service times for condo rules. They didn't want us there from 9 to like 5 because there's office people doing their thing. Accessibility. We didn't want to use the front. We could only use the back. Size constraints. I don't know what we would have done during COVID. That would have been a disaster. Thank God we had this huge space to do it. Because it was 8-foot ceilings and carpeted floor. We said it was a place where sound came to die. Father Nick would belt out because it was insulated so it wouldn't be loud. So it was a temporary solution, but by no means perfect. So one of the first services we had on a feast day, it was a feast of the three hierarchs. It was in late January. And we had services at 9:30 like you're supposed to and everything else. And I come home, I sit in my chair like good priest, I did my job. And I get a phone call from the condo association. Your music was bothering people and the incense was causing somebody to have a headache and blah, blah, blah. And, we have a problem. I'm thinking, we just moved in and now, these people are giving us a hard time. So what do I do? Well, I used what the good Lord gave you. So I quick put my collar on, I put my contacts in, I slicked back my hair, went to Dunkin' Donuts, got coffee and flowers, and walked in next door, and there was a whole bunch of ladies that were there as secretaries. I said, ladies, was there a problem? Oh, no, Father, oh, no. Never had a problem again, right? Come to find out, they rented space. We owned our space. We had the majority share. So they told them what they're supposed to do after that. No. But literally, we had the majority share, so we were owners. They were renters. So when we had these meetings, our opinion had a little more weight than theirs because we owned the building. So this early morning liturgy, we started having liturgies like 7:30 in the morning. I am not a morning person. The sacrifices I make for my people, right? So people could go to church and then go to work. And so, because the association wanted not after 9 a.m. or before 6 p.m., incense, noise, they can't complain. So we tried to follow all those rules as best we could. We broke the noise rule from time to time, just once or twice, right? In the midst of this whole process, we basically, the parish voted to have a full-time priest come down, and they could pay for a 2-year full-time priest. And after that, we don't know. And so I got there and said, okay, we have this chance to do this for 2 years, and people have to step up, and they did. 20 years later, still here. And so the OCA had a mission planning grant. And so they would give $15,000 for 3 years. Well, in the midst of this whole thing, in 2007, I think, is when there's some financial troubles in the OCA, and the funding was pulled. And so in November, I'm told that I'll have a $15,000 deficit for the next year in November, going into the new year. It's like, what are we going to do? And so we have to pray. And Lord, help us in this. What are we going to do in this pitfall and whatever else? And then some anonymous gentleman came forward to SIASA, to the National Church, and funded the whole thing. And instead of $15,000, you're given $20,000 the last year. God provided. And so Father Eric Tossi, who then was the director of evangelization and then later the OCA secretary, he came and did a site visit to make sure we were doing what we were supposed to do. And after he saw the good things happening here, he then asked me, would you go to other parishes and tell the story? And so I would do that. I'd go to other parishes and preach and tell them if you're going to get the planning grant, here's what's going to happen, that kind of thing. So the parish starts cooking with gas. We're doing things. In the midst of all this, we have our first parish vocation, Father Seraphim Reynolds, my deacon for 7 years, who I love dearly, graduated the diaconal formation program at St. Tikhon's, ordained in our parish, and then was ordained a priest because the diocese had needs, and now he's the priest at Holy Cross Church in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So this mortgage for that first building, we paid it off on Christmas Day in 2010. We paid it off in 4 years. And so that following October, we burned the mortgage and said, okay, now what? We needed a goal just because we needed one. And we said, okay, let's say Pascha 2013, $200,000. Let's raise that money so we can have something to start working with. And we met the goal 4 months early. We did it. So now we have a new problem. Right? We paid off the thing. We have money in the bank. Where do we put everybody? Because the church kept growing. If you our census, 45 adults, 91 adults. Last year we were 138 adults. I can't wait to do the one for this year because we've grown by even more. But we're running out of room. What are we going to do with this? So again, we had a vision committee come together and what direction we want to go? Do we buy land? Do we buy a building and convert it? Do we find something? What do we do? And just like this kind of survey we put out today, we put a survey out. People talked about it. And we decided we wanted to buy a piece of property and build on it. And so, on March 15th, 2013, we bought this property. Beware of the Ides of March. Although at Holy Apostles, we're not afraid of the Ides of March. It's a good day, right? And so we started working to make a artist rendering of what the building could look like on this place. And so we worked with an architect and put it together. And this was the big sign we put out, actually on the highway here. And then on October 13th, 2013, we blessed the property. It was an amazing day. We came out here. It was an overcast day, and we came out here. This huge hole opened up in the sky around where we were serving. It was so beautiful. Blessed the property. After we blessed the cross, priests went in all different directions on the property with holy water and blessed the entire thing. Pretty amazing. Later, that next year, we had a special parish meeting and to approve funding to build the building. And it was a unanimous decision. I did the vote twice to make sure it was unanimous. Everyone was in agreement of it. And so January 7th, 2015, I signed the $1.5 million construction loan, probably the scariest thing I did in my life. Nicholas, my bodyguard right there. Okay, so we have a property, we have plans, we have a loan that we're paying on, but nothing was happening. And so from January 2015 to July 2015,
previous slide. I don't speak Pierogi, so what does that say in this public?
It's Slavonic, show some respect. Lord have mercy. Yes. It's a joke, Peter. It's good. Okay. So from January 2015 to July 2015, nothing happened. The building committee was working on these plans, but the township was just dragging their feet. And it got to the point where we would send something, the township would have something in one office, didn't talk to the people across the hall, they didn't know what was going on, and it just kept spinning our wheels. And so what are we going to do? So fast forward from that January to June, and we had the Feast of Holy Apostles on the 30th. I took the relics of Holy Apostles, and we went to the property out here on that day, and it said, let's serve a Moleben for the beginning of any good work. We didn't have a good work that we're planning to do, but eventually it would happen. And so we did. We went and served the Moleben with the relics of the apostles. And the prayer talks about when ye pray, believe you shall receive it and you shall have it. Right? I get home, I sit in my chair, the phone rings, the township calls, says, come get your permit, you can start your building project. On the Feast of the Holy Apostles, after we prayed for them to help us that day. A month later, this was just doing our thing. A month later, we started. Kirill was there and took the first picture of the first dig of property, of dirt. And then they started. They put the foundation down and off they went. September 14th, the elevation of the cross, the walls went up. We had the Amish help us build the church. Amazing. They get here at 8, leave at 4, no dilly-dallying, no fooling around. I asked one of the guys one time, got to know him, I said, Jeremiah, how is it that you guys are Amish and you use them power tools? He's like, well, they're not plugged into anything. I said, aha! Like Orthodox people in fasting rules. You find like the loophole or something. So they put the whole thing together. It was an amazing process to see how it all went together. I always like to point out to the bishop that at one time we were the most transparent and policy compliant parish in the OCA. Right there, right? This is right there, looking towards the altar. And so here we are, but now we need a roof. So in November, the roof went on. And when the truck came to drop these trusses off, it was amazing. He pulled up on the property here and like undid everything and then gunned it, and the whole thing went boop, like noodles. I'm thinking, you're putting that on my roof? They're all just these flimsy things. Well, when you put those flimsy things in certain order and then lock them in, that's not going anywhere. That's why it's so important that specifically by, they're lined up a certain way. And so the internal framing went in. Then we had drywall, people painted. It started to look like a church. But in the middle of it, we had this disaster where there were 5 things we were supposed to do on pre-building meeting minutes we weren't at. And so when we were doing the building, the inspector came to look at it. Those things weren't there, and he blew a gasket. Mark Linehan called me from Christ the Savior, and he said, "Father, you better get over here. There's a real problem." So I come over, and the guy is just screaming his head off that we were trying to go around him and shut the whole project down. And so this was like during Holy Week. So for 6 months, the project was or 6 weeks it was shut down, but then delayed everything for 6 months because all the contractors are lined up. We're $280,000 over budget, which before the building project, our parish budget was $280,000. I'm thinking, that's it, they're sending me to Kamchatka, the whole thing's gonna tank, this is the end. And on our feast day, a gentleman from New York visited and said, "Father, this icon of the Joy of All Who Sorrow is for your parish. You need to have this." It's a 17th, 18th century icon of the Mother of God. And I thought, thank you. And so we received this icon and promised that when we built the church, we'd make a special place for her in the church. And after that, money started coming in, the contractors worked out, and then it started to put everything back in order, and we got back on track. Amazing thing. And so this icon that we have here, we celebrate her feast day every October 24th with a service in honor of it. And I'm not going to say publicly this is a miraculous icon, but I know so many people have prayed in front of it and things have happened. And so we thank God for it. This is one of my favorite slides. It's me preaching in the same spot for 3 years in a row, in the field, in the shell, and in the church. It's an amazing thing. The dome went up in July. Cross was put on the back wall. The building was built. And then our first service in the new building was the Feast of Protection of the Mother of God, 2016. The Archbishop came down for the first Vespers. And so our first liturgy, it looked like that. And a priest friend of mine, as priests are, they saw pictures on Facebook and said, no doors, no doors. I wrote back, no funds, no funds. Well, someone from Christ the Savior, Frank Bufano, blessed in memory, I can say this now because he's departed, he said, "Well, Father, how much does an iconostas cost?" I said, "I have no idea." He said, "Would $25,000 start it?" I'm like, that would start it. Gave us the money. I put out a plan of icons to pay for things, and boom, you have what you see here. Our first Pascha in our new building was an amazing time that we celebrated this. We could actually do it without any kind of constraints. And then by the end of that season, the iconostas was finished. And it was amazing to me to see this conceptual drawing, right? This is what we had in our minds was going to look like. And then later on, it looked just like that. The concept became a reality, and we were there. However, those of you who were here from that time, say it with me now, it's not the final church, right? That was our motto when we first moved in, because I didn't want people getting too comfortable here, because ultimately the church is going to go there. This is not the church, this is the hall, right? It's all going to go next door, that wall comes down. This is not the final thing. So the floor plan of this building, this 7,300 square foot building, the plan is that that wall will come down, and then we'll build the proper church next door. Maybe. We'll see. But look at our property. We have this huge land, 13 and a half acres, all kinds of stuff we could do here. And so we planned it out where we want the church. One of the things that came around this survey in 2009 was people said they wanted a cemetery. And I didn't see that coming, a cemetery, I never thought about that. And then we started talking about it. Could we do this? Could we afford it? How do we do it? How do you put a cemetery in? How do you get permission for it? And so we went to, Mark Linehan was amazing. We went to the township several times to kind of get this. And basically, he got them to admit there were no rules that we could or couldn't have a cemetery. because he hadn't put a cemetery in Mechanicsburg in 100 years. So he said, well, show me where it says you can't do it. They're like, oh, well. So that you're saying we can do it. They're like, well, I guess you could. Yeah. And so they couldn't say no, so we did it. And at one point, they were trying to hold it back. We wanted to have a green burial and all these different things. And one of the guys on the township board, he said, well, we're just afraid that if there's a zombie apocalypse that we'll get out. Ha, 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 made a joke. And Mark leaned over to me and says, there's not enough brains in this room to satisfy the zombies that would come out of that. I said, don't say that out loud, you get killed, right? But they couldn't say no, and so we put our cemetery in. So the parish cemetery came about, but we did it in a specific way that we were not going to charge people for it. That if you're a member of our parish, and assuming you're tithing, you're supporting our parish, that burying you is part of the mission of the church. One of the things we do, you'll see on Wednesday at Joe's funeral, is we fill in the graves ourselves. Now, one thing, stipulation of our cemetery is that the parish council has approval over gravestones to make sure we don't put weird stuff in our cemetery. Don't like a fiberglass Elvis or something, But one of my favorite stories, it was Denny Hare's burial. Denny died in July, so it was like 1,000,000 degrees the day that we had the funeral. And the honor guard, these guys are like in their 80s, come out with all dressed, the wool dress uniform, practicing at 9 o'clock. The funeral wasn't until 11, burial was at 12. They're out there 3 hours before practicing. Well, sure enough, they get to the end, they do the 21-gun salute and everything else. One of the guys, boom, down he goes. So we have to, kind of get the guy, he was fine, we got him rev up, called the ambulance, they come. By this time, we're finishing the funeral. So by the time the ambulance comes, we're filling in the grave. And Mark Lenihan is waiting there and says, well, guys, you were too late. We already took care of it for you. We always can smile at holy apostles. But we put this in proximity to the church on purpose. When you leave the church, you see the cemetery. Whither we mortals all shall go. Reminds us of this, that they're still part of our community. So all these amazing things, the question is, how did this happen? Well, it happens in a specific order. Worship, fellowship, education, and stewardship. In that order. Father Alexander Addy told me this, that it has to happen in this priority. And he says that when we talk about worship, for instance, we love to say, come and see, right? But I always like to add, what the heck are they seeing when they come, right? Is the church clean? Are the servers trained? Is the choir rehearsed? Is the priest prepared? Are the people pleasant, right? When people come to see, what are they encountering? And so it's an important thing for us. Worthship, right? That's where the Old English contraction of worship. Worthship. How much is something worth to us? Our worship better be pretty important. That's why we do all this amazing stuff with gold and wood carved, whatever else, because it's for the living God. It's for the best we have. But when it comes to priorities, divine liturgy is the foundation for all parish activities. Anything we were to do, all these other things, it's all well and good and whatever, but the focus and attention of our parish is always the liturgy. And it has to be. Because if not, what are we doing? No visitor ever came to a Pascha service and commented on the whatever ministry of the parish. Worship is what they're impacted by. And so worship is what we do, who we are, and we better do it right, or at least have the best of what we have. Because ultimately what we're called to do is make our community a place where we encounter the living God. How do we connect people with that? And so in this whole process, it's not just me making stuff up as we go along. We needed leadership. His beatitude, our Metropolitan Herman, of blessed memory, blessed the creation of the mission. One of the last official acts as Bishop of the Diocese was my assignment here, and then Bishop Tikhon took over. Tikhon was our bishop from 2005 to 2009. Blessed the beginning of this building project. And then His Eminence, our Archbishop Mark, has been our bishop ever since, leading us, guiding us, directing us as we go through. But it's important to have that. It just don't make stuff on our own. We get permission for these things. So we have this building. We got to put stuff together, but this stuff costs a lot of money. How do we equip a church on a budget? Well, you send Father Tim with some ideas to Walmart. Our first baptismal font was a blue plastic tub from Walmart. Our first theophany was a little metal tub of water that we blessed. We've graduated these things. We had a parishioner who was a Ukrainian tailor at one time, and I had this, kind of laminated icon of Christ being taken off the cross and some material, and he sewed the whole thing together and made a shroud for us for Holy Friday. And so we made do. But then as we grew, we could do better than that, and so we upgraded things. I learned we had parish woodworkers, right? And so we had all kinds of things to put, different projects. They built the tomb, right? The doors, the cross, our cemetery cross. That 15-foot cross that's in the back, this isn't a staged photo. That's us literally trying to put the cross up, and eventually we got it up. But people, use their talents when we were installing the wood floor. Parishioner says, we could do that. So we did it ourselves. We come after work in the evening, and somebody bring Arby's or whatever, and we sit here and do the floor ourselves. So any mistakes, it's our fault. But they did a beautiful job with it. My Eagle Scouts in the parish, Jay Kurtz made the altar table. John Linehan made the choir stands, right? And so finding the talents that people had to do these things, to build this stuff up, this would cost thousands upon thousands of dollars to do, and people offer these as their gift to the parish. We made shelves for our reliquaries. Parishioners did all this. We didn't ask somebody else to do it. And one of the neat things about our parish is we have all these different traditions that come together. We're part of the Orthodox Church in America, so it's encompasses everything. And so you have these Slavic traditions, you have Greek traditions, you have American traditions. And so we started, encompassing everything together. It was kind of funny. One of the parishioners, they would always go to Pascha somewhere else, and they were more of a Byzantine style. And so the Byzantine style was the priest comes out and says, come, you receive the light, and gives the light. In the Russian tradition, you just sing Thy Resurrection, come out, give the light, and go. And so she said, well, I'll be here for the first Pascha in our parish. How do you do come receive the light? I said, who, the what now? And they look on horror on her face. I'll learn. So I went on YouTube and learned how to do it, whatever. And so we do it. The other thing that's been such an important part of our parish is our choir. They practice every week. They're amazing. So many people that come to our parish, they're moved by it. Heck, I'm moved by it every Sunday. It's so beautiful. But it's a ministry of the parish that these people don't just show up and whatever, but they come and practice and come up to services, and Barb leads them so beautifully. We've done so many things that at one time, whenever we had something, people said, could Holy Apostles sing for it? And I got to the point, I said, each parish has to do their own thing. You guys got to have your choirs do it and step up. And so we started doing that. But for us, worship is the center of everything. The altar is the epicenter of our parish. Liturgical life takes precedence over everything and anything's happening. If anything is happening else at the parish, it stops. Right? There's a meeting going on before Vespers. I want it to stop when Vespers starts. One time there was somebody cutting the grass before we had a service do it, and it was during a presanctify during Holy Week in the morning. And I heard this lawnmower going off, and I come outside on Star Wars Day, like Darth Vader in my black vestments. So I said, stop! And I said, not until church is over. We have to get this done. It can be done after services. I'm not going to serve services while someone's cutting the grass. You can't do that. We should be in the church serving, and we're done, everything else. Priorities. So this is an important thing. Of worship has been a focus that we have to do it right, because we're Orthodox, right? Orthodoxa, right glory. We got to get that right. The second thing is fellowship. The more time we spend together, the stronger the bond of the parish. And we do all kinds of stuff together. And so fellowship is not just a nice idea, it's a necessary thing. We've done picnics and, OMG and the men's breakfast group, P6, that's coming in July. We did a Holy Supper back in the day, meat fair, cheese fair, Pascha, right? Always doing stuff together. And this was when we blessed the property. We just pulled chairs together and just hung out, right? It's a great thing. We established a youth group, LOL, Living Orthodox Lives, right? We love acronyms here. Around the last Sunday of every month. But the kids get together and do things together. So fellowship is an important part of it. We're together. But with fellowship also, then you have people gathered together, then you educate them. Father John Reeves of blessed memory, he said, Christ used to play with children and teach adults. Now he play with the adults and only teach the kids. People have to know what we believe and why we believe it. And so education is an important thing in the life of the parish. Orthodoxy 101, Sunday during fellowship hour, September through about Pascha time. Church school, September through May. We're just going to wrap it up in a week or so. We have a weekly Zoom Bible study in downtown Harrisburg. We have adult ed Wednesdays after Vespers. The wonderful Orthodox women have their book club, the Haitian Church School, mini retreat, annual parish retreat. All these different opportunities to learn something about our faith. And in years past, before COVID, we had specific topics we talked about. A Christian ending, burying people. The Orthodox perspective of Islam, that was a fun one. And then Mary Mysteries and Mission, Foundations for Christian Living. And got, people to come in and talk to us about these things. It's a wonderful thing that, that we can be educated in the life of our parish. And so we don't forget to teach the kids, even the big ones. because everyone here has to learn, myself included. We're always learning. When Archbishop Mark became the Bishop of Philadelphia in eastern Pennsylvania, this gold cloth that sits on the altar table called the antimons was given to us. For the first time, we'd have our own, antimons. And so I asked him, I said, most people don't know what this is. Can I use this as a teaching moment to explain to the parish? He said, absolutely. So I gave the sermon about what an antimons is, this kind of placemat, this, celebration of liturgy that has relics in it of a martyr. Our St. Hilarion of Berea, why I mentioned him at the end of every service because his relics are there. And so we preached about him. We sang his troparion. Everyone came forward and kissed the antimons. I then took it, put it on the altar, and it's been there ever since. And one of my older priest friends, he's like, that was just inappropriate. You shouldn't do that. I said, do your people know what an antimensian is? They're like, well, no, mine do, right? Use the opportunity to teach people something, and then we move forward, right? Not normally done, but be creative, but for the sake of education. Next thing is stewardship. Again, worthship. How much is he worth? The Old Testament biblical model was 10%. The New Testament model is 100%, right? How we give is an indication of where we are spiritually. How, not what, but how we give. You can give $1 bajillion and be miserable about it. I don't want your money. But you can also give $10 and be joyful because that's all you can do. God bless you, right? The bottom line is all his. If you get people's wallets, you might get a few bucks. But if you get their hearts, they'll give you everything. And that's what I've seen so often in this parish in the last 20 years I've been here. I always joke, I said, especially former Protestants that already understood tithing, I said we baptize everything but their wallets. They already know that part, right? But time, talent, treasure. It's not just about money. So shifting gears slightly, some major obstacles we faced became crossroad moments when overcome benefited our parish. The first thing was, do we buy property or get a full-time priest, right? How important is a full-time resident priest to the life of a community? And I remember after I've been here a couple months, Joe Fetzko, bless his memory, loved him. He said, well, Father, I was in favor of the property. Thanks a lot, Joe. But I'm happy you're here, Father. Okay, good, me too. It's a beautiful piece of property. I've been right, I saw it. But anyway, but the bishop said, no, you need a priest. The priest leads you. A piece of property is going to be there. The priest will help you get the property, right? So we move forward. So the question always is, what is the role of the priest? What is the priest's role in the parish? Dun, 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 right? What? And the honest thing is, it changes. But he's not the king, of course. What is the role of the priest in a parish? Ultimately, the job of the priest is, to serve, to hear confessions, to counsel people, to minister to them. That's our job. That's Father Alexander Schmemann wearing Father Nick, his vestments in Alaska. Pretty cool. But, the other thing, too, is love covers a multitude of sins. I'm a flawed person, whatever. People know that. But by taking care of your priest, it goes back to what my father-in-law said. If I love you and you love me, you take care of us. There was a time when the kids were younger, people would come up to us at coffee hour and say, Father, when's the last time you took Matryoshka on a date? Drop the kids off on Thursday night and go. And we would. In 2009, when the economy took a hit, I'm paid the median income of Mechanicsburg, right? Well, the median income went down. But we were doing all this amazing stuff in the parish. The parish couldn't, stand to give me less. And so they voted for a one-time gift of $5,000 to our family. And that week, the realtor told me I needed an extra $5,000 to put a down payment on our new house. And it just happened at the same time, right? And it's this beauty of a long-term assignment. Like when I got here, Matt Linehan was in junior high. And now I married him and baptized his kids. And, it's amazing to see the church grow and develop and, you be father for the parish. And how you treat the priest makes all the difference. St. John Chrysostom has this great line. He says, he who honors the priest honors the whole priesthood. He who honors the priest honors Christ. But also assumes that the priest, treats his people like a father would treat their children, with love and respect. And so this whole thing of sharing this responsibility, I can't do this by myself. And so we need it's not just about those people need to help. You, me, us, we need to do this, right? It's easy to think it's just the job of the priest, but I can't do my job effectively without the help of people in the parish. So it's such an important thing when I see all these different talents and people pitching in to do things that I don't know how to do. They can do it well, and I say, God bless you, go do it, and then come back and report. The other thing about our parish that's been important is being kid-friendly. I always joke that if the kids decide to take over, we'd be in trouble, because the balance, right? So be kind to them. But when you have a kid-friendly parish, make sure there's an area for mothers to nurse, because it's important. high chairs, changing table, encourage them to participate, have a playground, stuff for little children kind of thing. But I always remember Father Chad Hatfield. He said when St. Vladimir's Seminary was like bursting with kids, he said, Father, trying to give a sermon at a place like trying to give a sermon in the monkey house at the zoo. So there's within reason. If kids are screaming bloody murder, take them out, calm them down, bring them back in. But just keep these in mind. One of the things that is really important to our parish is on Holy Saturday, the kids read the Old Testament readings. And the first year we did it, I didn't think it through, and I just had signed up. And all the kids read one but Anna. And at the end, she was upset because she didn't participate. And Joe Kurtz, God love him, he kind of saw she was upset, grabbed a candle, led her by the hand, and they stood in the middle of the church in front of the tomb and said the Lord's Prayer together. And everyone just stopped and looked and I said, okay, here's the plan. Well, that year, Linda Kurtz worked with Anna on the first reading from Genesis, the whole year. And so when first reading came up again, wisdom, Anna said the reading from Genesis, let us attend, and she read it. And to this day, her name is already printed on the stage, her reading. And there was someone who's not a member of the parish anymore that came up to me and said, well, that was very distracting. And I, at that point, it's Holy Week, I'm tired, there's no. I said, shut up. I thought, I want to hear it. I said, that's her reading. If you don't like it, tough. Right? And they eventually went on to other pastors, God bless them. But that's her reading, right? And we have a place for people in our parish. Years later, there was a young lady in our parish that was severely autistic and would just make like barking noises and like kind of loud. And the father didn't bring her at first because he was afraid that she'd be distracting. So finally, he eventually did. He just got used to it, no big deal. And Bishop Tikhon at the time was with us, and he's in the middle of the church, and because the liturgy started differently, it was different kind of routine, she was really kind of upset and making all kinds of noises, and I'm standing in the middle of the church with the bishop there, I'm like, what's he going to think? And I looked up at Bishop Tikhon, and he looked at me, and he smirked. I said, she's happy you're here. He says, I'm happy she's here too. We started liturgy. I thought, there it is, right? That's it, right? So this is an important part of it. We spend lots of time together, right? And like just today, busy. We're all busy. That's why we try to fit this in this afternoon if we could. But we thought for fellowship hour, rather than just having coffee and donuts, we could do better than that. The last thing you want to do is go home and make dinner, right? So eat, and then go home and take the PLN, right? The post-liturgical nap. That's what we're supposed to do. But when we celebrate this liturgy after the liturgy, the last thing I ever want to see is a coffee hour basket saying, here, put some money in it. Like, if you come to my house, I don't give you a bill, right? You're my guest. If you come to our church, you're our guest. And I've been to parishes where they do that. There's a coffee charge and donut charge, and I get myself in trouble. Now I'm vice chancellor, that's their fault. But I said, why are you doing this? This is terrible. We're supposed to be hospitable, that kind of thing. People hide the signs when they come around sometimes. Because I feel adamant about this. It should not be something we charge people for. And then we thought about this logically in the parish. Then we don't charge for candles. We don't charge for the prosphora slips. If you want to give a donation, that's wonderful. You should, right? That's what we do. But there's no charge for them. And so as we developed as a parish, we realized we have this diocesan assessment. Every person was charged by X amount of dollars, whatever else. It's like, that's just not the way we're supposed to do it. So we decided to trust in God. And we prepared this. We said, okay, next year what we're going to do is we're going to tithe 10% of what the church gives in, we're going to give to the diocese. And so we prepared for it by adding $50 to our head tax that whole year. And then when we got to that point, we took 10% of our budget, divided by 12, and sent that every month to the diocese. We did it, then another parish did it, then another parish did it, now the whole diocese does it. But it's not about just demanding money from people, but this offering that we give, and it benefits the parish, the diocese, and the national church. If every person is tithing to the church church tithes to the diocese tithes to the national church uses that money for ministries. It's an amazing thing if we do it properly. Another thing that happened during this time is we started monthly charity collections. We still do it, second Sunday of the month. And not just local things, not just churchy charities, but all kinds of stuff. Father Dan Restar had a great saying. He said, if your hand is open to give, they can put more in. But if your hand is closed, the little you have will go out through your fingertips. You'll never hold it in. And so this is a very generous parish. We have all kinds of stuff we've given to over the years. Just people recommend things and we do it. One of the things we're going to do this month, Father Tom Soroka, those who know him from Pittsburgh, his church, there was a windstorm last week, blew the dome right out the church, fell. The insurance not going to cover all the things. We're going to help them and do our charity to support them, right? Help other people. But one of the things that came up, there was a synagogue in Harrisburg that burned down. And they said, Father, can we do our charity collection for the synagogue? I'm like, Yeah, why not? So we did a collection. At the time, it was like $600 or something. It was early days of Parish. And one of the things I like to do in the local charities is I like to take them to the place and give them to them on behalf of our parish in person. So I called the rabbi and I said, can I meet you for this? And he said, yeah, how do I know who you are? I said, you'll see me coming, don't worry. So I met him at the Starbucks in Camp Hill, and we sat down and had a conversation about it. And he said, I have to tell you something. He said, every time I see a cross, I think of my grandfather back in Ukraine, that when the pogroms came through and these Christians were doing this kind of thing. And I'm like, what part of Ukraine? Because my great-grandfather was from the exact same area at the same time. And I said, well, whatever happened back then, I don't know. I said, but what I do know is right now, this Christian community is offering this to you. So when you see a cross, think of that. He says, fair enough. And so when they buried their Torah from the fire, fascinating thing. We went to the cemetery, they were invited there for it, and they hand the Torah down person to person to this hole they dug to bury it in there. The cantors that read out off this thing for like 50 years gave a eulogy for the Torah as if it was a person. The Word as if it was a person, right? Right? So I'm sitting there waiting for the candid camera guy to jump out because like Christ just fits perfectly in the whole system, right? Amazing, but they don't realize it. So pray for them. A warm welcome. When people come to church, how many people are come to churches in other places and aren't welcome? It's terrible. And so we have people like Krill par excellence, like just the greeter extraordinaire, right? But there's a time where Krill visited a church somewhere and was not greeted properly. He said to himself, I'm not going to let that ever happen to anybody else, and takes it upon himself to make sure people are greeted. But it shouldn't just be in church for all the people. It should always be in the hall as well. One thing I can't stand is when I come into the hall and see somebody who's a visitor sitting by themselves. So, and my kids know it. If they see me noticing, they get up and move and whatever. And so it was kind of cute. A couple years ago, we were at an event in Baltimore for the OCA, and we were at this clergy reception, and this one older priest was sitting at a two-person table by himself. And we're sitting as a family. Elijah looks over and goes, Dad. I'm like, okay. I got up and moved because Elijah saw it but gave me the eye to go sit with the guy who was sitting by himself, right? It's good. But welcome people. But at the same time, when we welcome people, give them their space, right? Because, this is a lot to take in, right? Most people walk into a church, there's like, a wooden cross on the back wall and a podium and a guy in a suit that gives a sermon. Great. We walk in here, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I'm wearing four-leg brocade with a flaming purse, yelling, Christ is risen, everybody. Like, what is going on here? And the whole place is on fire, It's a lot to take in. Some people just have to just take it in, right? It's important. In the early days of our parish, the early meetings or beatings, as it were, I looked at the old minutes. I wasn't part of those meetings that first year, but those original people, they know those meetings were, a lot of stuff went through to form this parish to be, what it is today. And it's a great thing to see all the work that went into it and the planning for the future that lasted us even to this very day. One of the things the decision we came along to was Father John Matuziak, of blessed memory. He told me, he says, Father, you got to have pizza and beer at your meetings. I'm thinking, that would be a really good idea or a really bad idea. I don't know. But think about it. Everyone's at work all day. You're tired. You're hangry. You come, you want to eat something. And you have some food. You have a drink or two. By the end of it, we're sending more money to charity. Sure, give them more charity. It's great. And so people, again, they were fellowshipping at the meeting. It's a good thing. In terms of outreach, OCF, this difficult ministry, but it's critically important. I always say that the college ministry is like Sisyphus. You roll the rock to the top of the hill, and then boom, start over again. I'm just talking to some of the kids that left today. Like, that was the last time I'm going to see them before they get married and graduate, because they're seniors and they're going to move on. And we have new people coming in. It always continues. But it's critically important. And one of the things we've done as a parish is we've had adopted a college student program where people, sign up to keep an eye on that student. There's a survey where they like special dates in their life and, snacks they like, whatever else. They send them messages, take them to dinner. Make sure they're okay. Like, they have a connection with someone they know at church. Especially if you're away from home, it's easy not to go to church on Sunday. But if someone says, hey, we miss you, where were you? And they provide rides to church. That's the thing. The Messiah kids can never say, we couldn't come to church. We have like cars coming from all directions, whatever. Make sure they get there. It's an important thing. One of the things we do every year is we bless the Susquehanna River. It's the 4 Orthodox churches in Harrisburg participate in it. It's usually very cold, but it's a good thing that we share our faith in what we do in blessing creation every January. Over the years, we've done different missionary outreach activities. Jubilee Day is the largest one-day street fair in the Eastern Seaboard. We had a kind of a tent, did our thing, visited people. I can tell you all kinds of stories about that. Linda Kurtz and I just started twitching. We think about Jubilee Day now. They got kind of weird about it at the end, what we couldn't do, and they're making crab cake frying down the way. It smelled terrible, but they said they were complaining about our incense burning outside. It's like, really? But anyway, so we weren't having a problem with our parish growing, so it wasn't a necessity, but it's still something we did in the past. Also, in Messiah Village, I would give 2 classes there, one in the spring, one in the fall. And then just 2 weeks ago, I had a field trip come with people to learn about the church and give a church tour. It's kind of a neat thing. One of the things we did early on, we had a choir concert. Father Dan Kavalik says, find ways to get people in the door, because all they have to do is see and hear, and they'll come. It's kind of funny, when I invited a Mormon one time, and I kind of thought this one through. I invited him to Christmas. I knew he wouldn't be busy that day. And he came. He came to Christmas service, and we had a good conversation about it. So it's interesting. Communication, a big thing. Bulletin, Sunday announcements, monthly calendar, regular newsletters, Facebook, Instagram, weekly email, update parish website, visible parish sign in English. St. Nikolai Azicha said we should be ultra-conservative in what we say and ultra-modern how we say it. He was talking about English, but I think we could use that to talk about this now. It amazes me sometimes, all these different things we do every week, and people are like, I didn't know that. That's why one of the reasons for this is to make sure people know that when we do this project, that we're all on the same page with it. One of the things we did in years past, we had an Orthodox coffee house in Harrisburg, sadly. Starbucks, had 4 branches that opened within like a 3-block radius and just killed the thing of foot traffic. But we had it for a bunch of years, and people came to our parish because of it. Now we have the Orthodox Christian Charities of Greater Harrisburg as part of the work that we do together as an Orthodox community. One of the things that it's a difficult part of our history, but it's still part of our history nonetheless, was the parish during the pandemic. What a weird time that was. The whole come and see, well, yes, but actually, no, what are we doing? How's this work? And so, this was my view for that Lent, which is weird, that nobody was in church. So I got the idea, so I like to see people when I'm preaching, but no one was looking at me, so I felt like subconscious, so I put icons everywhere. But then I got scared because St. Paul's now staring at me talking about St. Paul. So it's like, But it reminds us that we're all surrounded by the saints. But it was just such a weird time of everybody had an opinion, everybody was wrong, the bishops were saying this, the doctors were saying that, and parishes were saying this. This is an actual picture of our parishioners trying to get back into church. But no masks, you have to wear a mask, you need a vaccine, vaccines are bad. I was just like, blah, right? Because nobody taught me how to do this in seminary, right? So we're like figuring it out as we went along. And just like that, I was a televangelist, right? Blake got us hooked up with YouTube, and we started doing that for people, whatever else, live streaming, which was kind of a rocky issue at first. But one of the things that Joe Russian of blessed memory, he's the one that supplied the updated live streaming service, and I think he knew he was getting sicker and not able to come to church as much, and he wanted to be in church, but he couldn't. And so he made way that when he was stuck at home and other people, they could still participate and sing along. And it's beautiful. I have, they gave me his prayer book, and in his prayer book has the Barbier choir sheets from that day stuck in, so he's praying along with it when he wasn't there. It's amazing. And so this live stream has been a blessing for a lot of people, not just our parishioners, Irene and Dottie, but also people outside of our parish that can't come. So thank God for that. So once this COVID thing kind of, moved on, now we're kind of, hello?
It's like a dead street.
I'm not getting angry. Okay. There you go. Now we're back to business, right? We have this opportunity ahead. And so what we're seeing in the church now, not just in our parish, but across the country, is all these people are coming to the churches. I did a quick survey through Facebook the other day. Our parish, 10. St. Seraphim in Dallas, 40. St. Herman in Alberta, Canada, 38. Holy Annunciation in Lancaster, 11. John Damascus in Denton, Texas, 33. St. Seraphim Santa Rosa, 25. Holy Cross, South Carolina, 25. St. Nicholas Wharton, West Virginia, 11. St. Andrew Riverside, 37. In the Orthodox in Great Britain, they had to have one giant celebration of 200 people who were coming to the church that the bishop led with all the prayers just because it's exploding. It's happening all over the church that people are coming, seeing what we have. Our parish, currently we have 13. It's an amazing thing. In the midst of all of this, we started the mission in Gettysburg. Like I mentioned, this Wednesday night, there's no service here. There's a Vesperal liturgy down there for their patronal feast day. After the COVID period, we were blessed that, I gained my wingman. Father Nika, is with us, And Matushka Senior is the gold star parishioner. She never criticizes the priest. She always does things. He brings stuff. She's, starting ministries. It's good. We have our deacon, That's literally a quote from John Chrysostom, by the way. If any man misbehaves, let the deacon be summoned. Right? True. So some kind of observations. When I was a kid and learned how to ride a bike, my grandfather, would push me behind. He had this track by their house. And he pushes me off, and I'm doing my thing, and I turn around, and I said, "How am I doing?" Right? As I'm looking at him. And didn't see him crash into a bunch of trash cans and cut my arm on this side. I saw the scar. If I was worried about what I was doing, I would have been fine. But I'm worried about how I'm doing is when I fell. I think as a parish, we don't have to worry about how we're doing. We need to be worried about what we're doing in this place and time and doing the Lord's work. And so what we're doing needs to be important. The best evangelism is sometimes telling people you're a Christian and not being a complete jerk, right? Just be kind to people, right? When people come in, receive them. It's a good thing. And we talk about results. Archbishop Anastasius of Albania, who just passed away this year, he started the church in Albania from nothing. The communists just liquidated the church. It's terrible. Nothing was left. And he comes there and resurrects the church in Albania. Now it's a healthy church with monasteries and churches and priests and bishops, a synod and everything. And he says, don't worry about results. Make your cross, go forward, and just do your work. God will take care of the results. And I love that. And so Father Michael Alexa of blessed memory, he said that, if you sanctify the place where you're at, people will be trying to do it organically. He says St. Herman of Alaska was in the middle of nowhere, and people came to him drawn by the holiness he attracted by his prayer. If we make this the dwelling place of the living God, people are going to come organically, and they have. And so out there are our future parishioners. They're coming, right? We have to be ready for them. But we have to prepare for that, because with that, we have to worry about it. And so we're talking about this as the future, this proposed building, right? 6 million might be a little high. We look at some of the numbers, some of our guys, but still, it's going to be a big project. But it's an important thing of what this could look like. And so this year, as we celebrate all these things, we celebrate our 20th anniversary, which was an amazing experience with our Archbishop. We've had miraculous icons that keep visiting our parish. Last year was an amazing thing. We had 2 that came in that year. Some parishes never have it happen. It keeps happening here. And it's not me connecting people, making phone calls. You do this, I'll do this for you. They call me and say, "Father, can we come?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go on." The answer is always yes, right? So it's an amazing blessing that we keep seeing here. Something good is happening. We need to thank God for it. And so the present goals we have, we rejoice at 10 receptions on Lazarus Saturday. We now have 13 catechumens preparing to receive the church sometime next year. 4 inquiring young families I'm presently meeting with. But we want a goal of better attendance for Vespers and feast days, more participation in educational classes to learn more about our faith. Some of our goals: to pay off our $750 and change $1,000 mortgage from $1.3 million in 2005 down to $750. That's amazing. It's only cut in half. Get more comfortable financially, building up a little cushion and reserve. Everyone we should be tithing in thanksgiving for what God has done for us. Presently, our finances aren't exactly where we need them. Michael, I gave a good presentation today. We had a good month. It's good trends. But we need to get better at this if we're going to take on this big project. Because ultimately, it's ours. It's our project. And then, in terms of information, everyone should be more aware and invested in the projects we're working on. All the different ministries we have at church. We have all kinds of stuff we do here. If you don't know about these things, get involved, participate. But ultimately, remember, it's not through programs and stuff. It's through the Holy Spirit that this has happened. If we sanctify the place we're at, people will come to it organically. This is the life of our parish in 2004. And so the point is that if we do worship right, people will naturally want to be in fellowship together, and will be assembled and ready to learn, and will be eager to give their time, talent, and treasure for the building up of the Holy Church. One of my favorite stories is the two boys, the optimist and the pessimist. And the pessimist was just never happy. No matter what you did, he was always miserable. And the optimist, no matter what you did for him, he was always pleasant. They're twin brothers. How did this happen? So I did a test with them. They took the pessimist and put him in a room with every toy you could possibly think of and say, it's all yours. Have at it. Surely he had to be something positive in this room of toys. So they stick him in this room of toys and say, go to town. They take the optimist and put him in a room with 3 feet of horse manure everywhere. Put him in that room and says, see if you can be an optimist of that kind of mess. So as they're setting him up, they hear the pessimist crying in the other room. What could possibly be wrong? You're just, have all these toys. Oh, if I open them, they're going to break, and I don't know the pieces. I don't know how to play this game, and I'm miserable. And as they're talking to him, they hear the optimist, and they're just having a ball of a time, laughing, carrying on. What the heck could this kid possibly be doing in there? So they go in and open the door, and he's just slinging stuff everywhere, laughing. They said, what are you doing? He said, with all this manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere, right? And I think we need to look for the ponies because there's so much good that's happened. We can focus on the negative and whatever else, and people do, but we also need to focus on the good that God has done here. And so one of my favorite characters is Linus. I love Peanuts and Charlie Brown and all that. Linus was actually the first bishop of Rome. Peter founded it, but Linus was the first bishop. And so I think Charles Schwartz knew that and made Linus like the theologian. He's always quoting scripture, whatever else. But he always has his blankie, right? He always keeps his blankie with him. He's afraid he has his blankie. And there's even a series in the strip where he loses his blankie for a couple of days and no one can find it, whatever else. But if you remember the Christmas special, when Charlie Brown's trying to figure out the meaning of Christmas, and Linus says, I'll tell you the meaning of Christmas, Charlie Brown. He goes up to the stage and talks about, he recites the Christmas narrative from Luke. And when he gets to the point of the angel coming and says, fear not, he drops his blankie, which not many people pick up on that, but it's like, aha. But it goes back to what I said today in my sermon. Don't be afraid. Right? There's nothing to be afraid of. All we have is the benefits and the gifts that God has given us. Even with the pitfalls and the temptations that come at us, fine. But we have Christ. What else do we need? And he will bless this as he's been blessing it for the last 20-some years. And we thank God for it. Look at that group. That was last year. Good stuff. From 22 people at the original liturgy to our 190-some today. It's amazing. Thank God for it. Questions?
When we paid the mortgage off in the office space, there was a big chunk that came from a donation from someone's will. So I just wanted to tell people to think about that too.
Yeah, there's a lady named Margaret Baylog, and she was in a nursing home. And it was really sad. She was, she got older. She had some dementia, and every time I visit her, Father, I'm running out of money. They're going to throw me out of here. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to throw this poor woman out. This is terrible. And so she dies, and I went to Windber, Pennsylvania to bury her. And a year later, Father Stephen calls me and says, did you get your mail today? I said, not yet. He goes, check your mail. So I checked the mail. She had left in her will $2.3 million to churches, monasteries, nursing programs, libraries all across Pennsylvania. Left $50,000 to Christ Savior, $100,000 for our parish, and that was the foundation for a building fund for this building. And so it's an amazing thing where people leave things for the church that benefit the life of the church going forward. It's something to consider. I have a weird feeling about going to people and like talking to them about what's the word you use, Mike? Ghoulish, like when you're dying, leave money in the church. But I think that it's one of these things. If people are invested in what the church is doing, it happens organically. Like, of course they're going to do that. And it's an amazing thing to me that everything we've asked for, God has given to us. If we need something, truly need it as a parish, God has given it to us. There are things that I wanted that didn't happen overnight or whatever, and because God knows I'm not patient, so that's why He put me here. But that's a good thing. But I think that, I come back to that all the time. What is it that we've ever asked for that God hasn't given us? Right? And so we thank God for it. That's really what it comes down to. Anybody else? And I have to also mention this, that, this building would not have been built if Mark Linehan wasn't involved in it. I knew nothing about this stuff. I went to school for theology, and they put me in charge of a building project. Like, that's smart, right? I could tell you all about the theology of a building, but I couldn't tell you what goes where. And when the building was over, I had an icon made of the Archdeacon Lawrence. and I gave it to Mark because St. Lawrence was, how do we say this gently, had a witty sense of humor like Mark does, you know. And when he was being martyred in Rome on an iron grate, he said, "I'm done on this side, flip me over." I said, that's something that Linehan would say, right? But the Archdeacon of Rome, the Archdeacon to the Pope of Rome, was like the guy who was in charge of all the stuff, like managed the projects and whatever else. And so in this building project, Mark was my Archdeacon, and things I didn't know, you know, I didn't know what to do, how to do it, he would figure it out and we'd do it together. And how many times we go to the township and, you know, whatever. But a big blessing, a big help. But again, it's like God knows the people that are in the parish that have these gifts and talents. You know, I mentioned we were going to do this thing with a professional fundraiser, and I said, okay, well, I'll entertain the topic. I'm not going to say no to the things just until we go through it. But then it came about that, like, we have people in the parish that can do this, that want to do this, that have gifts and talents, that are marketing directors, whatever else. Why wouldn't we let them do it? That's the whole book of Acts. That the people in that community organically can build up the community by the gifts and talents that are there. So if people have a gift and talent, want to offer it, it's beautiful. Let's do it. So I thank God for it. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Joseph?
How many of parishioners in our community over the years have ever gone on to be like priests or monastics?
It's funny you say that. Matja's going to say, just have her vocations slide. I said, I don't have time to do it. But no, she was, again, she's right, you know, every time. Yeah. So, you know, it's an amazing thing. I mean, Father Seraphim was the first. You know, I mean, Alex is going to seminary this fall. That's an amazing thing. You know, Jake Kurtz, one of ours, is going to seminary this fall. Patrick O'Leary is in the diaconate formation program. It's an amazing thing. Subdeacon Sebastian, you know, I mean, it's, you know, over the years, one of the things that I tell people, a litmus test of the health of a parish are two things. The people that come not just to Sunday, but like feast days and other activities, and how many vocations they have from the parish. Because if you have a parish that's not healthy and it's miserable, and you know the priest's always fighting with the people, why the heck would you want to be a part of that? But if you see the interaction of the priest and the people, you say, I want to be part of this. I want to do this too. That says something about the community that they're in. What's that? Yeah, Nathan Jekyll, another one, you know. Yeah, the church. That's a good one. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So, I mean, it's an amazing thing that, you know, that God is blessed with people that are interested in serving his church. Yeah, we have a monk at St. Tikhon's, Father Pantaleimon. Yeah, it was received here. Yeah, amazing thing what God has done. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I hope this has been kind of, for those who haven't been through it, kind of give you an idea of where we came from and like the process of how it happened. You know, 21 years, a lot of things happened in that time, but also it went fast. And I'm anxious to see what God's going to do in the next 20 years, because we're not done by any extent of the imagination. Still, we got a lot of work to do, but it's good stuff. Angela?
I just wanted to add, we want to hear your opinion. We want your voice to be heard. We want you to feel a part of this whole process as we look at the path forward. Please fill out your surveys. There's also a QR code that you can, if you want to do it online. We would very much love to hear from as many people as possible. And we do value your voice and your input.
Thank you. Okay, let's all stand. Barb will sing Shine, Shine. At least we'll try. Shine, shine, shine on New Jerusalem, the glory of the Lord has shone on you. Exalt now, exalt, and be glad, O Zion, be radiant, O pure Theotokos, in the resurrection of your Son. Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
Thank you, everyone.